Good morning, students. So, in the previous classes, we were studying our chapter number 9, the essential of life. So, in this chapter, in this video also, we will continue the same chapter, the essentials of life, whose values was patience and perseverance. I already explained what is the meaning of patience. So, patience refers to the control that one has over his thoughts and actions in the adverse circumstances and difficult situations, and how the person, in what conditions the person should possess a patience in his life. So, we were here to study a beautiful story, a tale of a tea and a cup. So, we have to start this story, tale of a tea and a cup. So, this story start with like this. I was not born as a teacup. There was a time when I was born only a lump of clay. My master bought me from the river bank in a village. He took me in his hand and began to pat, mold, and shape me. It was very painful. I begged him not to do that, but he only smiled. So this story is narrated by a cup of tea. He is explaining from the beginning onwards that when the particular teacup was not a teacup, it was just a lump of a clay. He was brought back from the river bank, and how a potter has molded him and shaped him into a teacup. The teacup, when the potter was making the teacup, the process was very painful. The lump of clay cried, but the potter only smiled. After this, he turned me on the spinning wheel. I went round and round. I began to feel sick. I begged him to stop, but he smiled and said, "Not yet." He kept on spinning me on the wheel. When I thought I cannot spin anymore, my master removed me from the spinning wheel. I was much relieved, but as I thought it was already now, he kept me in an oven. I thought my master wanted to burn me. I began to scream and yell. I begged him, "I cannot tolerate the heat anymore. Please stop." But he just smiled and said, "Not yet." So after that, the potter kept him on the spinning wheel and began to rotate the lump of clay. The lump of clay cried that "Do not do this," but the master said, "No, I will, no, not yet." And then they kept this lump of clay in an oven. It was very hot there, so the lump of clay cried again to keep him out, but the master again said, "No, not yet." Finally, he took me out of the oven. "Oh, I feel better now," I exclaimed with joy. After a few minutes, my master picked me up and began to rub and scrub me with a sandpaper. It was not very painful, but I did not like it. Then he took a paintbrush and began to paint my body. The smell of paint was very pungent. I did not like it at all. I begged him to stop, but he smiled and said, "No, not yet." Then he kept me into another oven. This was even more hotter than the first one. I thought I would die either because of excess heat or by suffocation. I pleaded my master to have mercy on me. I requested him, "Please take me out." But my master smiled at me and said, "Not yet." At this, I thought My life has become hopeless and I am approaching towards my end. Then suddenly my master took me out of the oven and exclaimed with joy, "Now it is ready." He carefully lifted me up in his hand and placed me on a shelf. So after taking this lump of clay from the oven, the master painted him. The smell of this paint, that paint was very bad. Anyhow, the master painted him and put him in another oven which was more hotter, and the smell, and finally he took this lump of clay from out of the oven and began to smile and said that it is ready and kept that on a shelf. After some time he came to me with a mirror and said and asked to me, "Look at it." I was amazed to myself in the mirror. I could not believe my eyes. I exclaimed with joy, "Oh my God, what a beauty!" I did not know that I could become such a beautiful teacup. My master explained to me, "My boy, I know your journey from a lump of clay to a beautiful teacup was very tiring, but if I would have left you, you would have simply dried up and would have always remained a lump of clay. You would not have achieved any identity of your own like you have it now." When I patted and molded you, I know it was very painful for you. I also know that the spinning wheel would drive you sick, but if I would you have left you alone, then I would have not achieved this result. When I brushed and painted you, I know it was frustrating for you, but think if I would not have painted you, then would you have not then you would not have such a beautiful and a colorful life. I knew the heat of the ovens was very hard for you, but think if I had not put you there, you would not have understood the pressures of life. My child, whenever you thought that I was hard at you, actually I was working for your betterment. So from the moment I set my hands on you, I had a beautiful image of you in my mind. Finally, the teacup, realized the importance of the patient and perseverance. So, my dear student, the moral of the story is patience and tolerance help to be help to win the best in life. So friend, how do you feel this is journey in the cup? So in this chapter we learn many virtues of the patience and tolerance in life. When we fall into any difficult situation, so remember build we should think that it is just for our building inner strength and courage. We should not lose hope in the difficult situation. We must always fight with the difficulties that comes to our life, and we must always work hard to overcome it. My dear student, the life is not easy. many times the person loses its Many times the person loses his hope, and when he suffers from the physical pain or the mental agony, grief and disappointment, so only the patient can sustain him in such cases. So when the conditions are not favorable, we should show the patience. We must not allow the frustration to dominate our patience. Like in the case of our studies, when we are giving our exams, so we must keep patience, and while keeping the patience, we must study for the exam. Finally, you will see that like as the teacup master molded the teacup, in the same way our God Almighty, He uses His mystical brush and paint our life in a very wonderful and colorful shade. We should always keep the flame of hope alive in our heart. My dear student, patience is a very essential virtue which controls our life to a very great extent. In this world of professionalism, in this world of competition, we must keep our keep ourselves patience, because there are chances of making mistakes, so we must always remain cool and calm. We should use our mind, we should analyze the situation and then decide actually the action, so we can deliver our best. A person can cross a mountain or can level it to the ground by only patience and perseverance. Patience can conquer greatest difficulties. When difficulties surround us, patience becomes the only remedy. We have already seen that the great poems, great invention, and great works of art are the results of patience and perseverance. Even Edison took a long time to invent a bulb. King Bruce, who was the king, fought 6 times to make his country free from the enemy, and finally then he succeeded. Demosthenes, who stammered in his speech, became the biggest, greatest orator of his time. Napoleon Saint became the emperor of France. So whenever we see the history, there are various examples of such conditions. So we must keep the importance virtue of patient tolerance and perseverance in life. Whenever we find us in a difficult situation, we should tolerate. Where we cannot tolerate anymore, we should try the following thing: we should get real, that is adjust according to ourselves in the reality, and do not imagine unnecessarily. We must control ourselves, we should not behave in an impatient or abnormal way. We should never retaliate. Sometimes people lay a trap for playing with your patient, but we should remain patient, do not fall in the trap, and we should not become impatient. We must understand our potential, and we must not react impatiently and to a certain situation. Instead, we should devise a plan to resist them. My dear student, God our Almighty, who have made us, He knows of us what we want, and He takes the raw material in His hand. So we must have patience and tolerance in life. It could not only emerge you as a complete individual, but also make us the successful person in our life by doing the best thing for us. Whenever the God says yes to us, He gives us what we want. And whenever He says no, He does not give what we don't want. So, my dear student, you should give your best. You should have patience. It will help out to give your best in your life. Now, the question answer of this chapter I will give in my next video. So till then you get prepared for the exam. Till then you go through this chapter. Okay, thank you.